Hi, this is Xiaomi Nipak. I'm a town manager. 5 or 6 years ago, there was a big concern about polar bears being harvested around our area, and due to too much harvest in a single year caused an awful lot of attractions amongst different organizations, especially in Nunavut. Traditionally, we have managed the polar bears since time immemorial. The management regime that the Inuit had been very effective up to the point where we still have polar bear. But due to the increasing number of people around this area, the polar bear may eventually be disturbed, and the management plan that was put in place by Nunavut was not shared by the Inuit, and Nunavut Inuit were looked into as if they had no management plan. But traditionally, the management regime was effective, and we hold on to it since today. And when our hunters, the discussions amongst different organizations were talking about total allowable take for the polar bears. And if this happened in our area, the people from my community would be exposed to the dangers of the polar bear if we respect the total allowable take. This would mean that the hunters would then have to avoid killing the polar bears. And if this happens, the people around this area, when they go hunting, would be exposed to the polar bears. This is very dangerous for humans because polar bears and people don't mix. So it's a big concern and still is. So when we were up to that point, there was a need to protect the polar bear habitat, at least protect the polar bear habitat. What's the thinking that I had when the question of polar bear was put on the table? I knew where the polar bear habitat was because my father used to know all these islands along the coast and has informed us that we don't necessarily need to go to Ottawa Islands, Arqvilliit. There's nothing there but polar bears. The polar bear habitat, I wouldn't have known it if it wasn't for my father. So, by word, traditional knowledge that has been transferred from one generation to the next has been ongoing, and this knowledge has been transferred to me. Therefore, I was able to make an action on it, and when we start thinking about putting a protected area, then the idea got bigger, and everybody agreed that there needs to be a protection. That amongst the hunters, this was a good idea, so we pursued it. And we applied to Climate Change Canada to see if we can get some funding to help us with our objective of trying to put the Ottawa Islands as a protected area. This was successful, and at that time the Municipal Council and Arqvilliit, our Hunting and Fishing Trapping Association, got together and agreed that they should lead this protected area issue, and developed a committee who would be a steering committee to make this project work. So as of now, we have a group committee members composed of Northern Village and Arqvilliit. So both of us have our own interests, and we're tackling this issue with whatever we have. But as we go along with the protected area question in our mind, there was a complication who the actual owner is for those Ottawa Islands. It's a complicated issue. One time they were part of Northwest Territories. We had a problem with their jurisdictional nonsense, and it's still ongoing. However, with the resources we have, we're trying to put these Ottawa Islands as a protected area, no matter who would be the owner. Our bottom line is these should be protected area. And this fall, we flew over some of the islands to see if the polar bears were still there, and they still were. So the knowledge we had, we got it by the words, but we had to see it for ourselves if they were still there. And they were still there. So after that point, we are in a full-fledged in trying to pursue the protected area in as much as possible. The application we submitted, along with the help of the Oceans North, was successful, and we were able to get 1.43 million out of that program. We asked for 2.4, but due to many applicants, we end up with 1.4. But we're trying to use this amount with as much in as much as we can, and we hopefully will be able to achieve our goal before our term ends. This program allows us to do 4-year work, and we are on the 2nd year now. We are developing on a yearly basis, but due to pandemic, we almost didn't work for 1 whole year due to travel restrictions. However, we are hopeful that this pandemic will go away and let us start doing our work. Before our year ends, we hope to get to the point where these islands will be protected area. This is still ongoing discussions because as we work along the way, some programs develop that touches the part of protected area. For example, the Indigenous protected and conserved area came up at the same time when we were looking at the protected area issue. So this is a good advantage for us, knowing that there is also a program that will be able to assist us if we will be in the actual protected area. The difference is the protection we are thinking is no disturbance at all, so that the polar bear will be in their habitat and in as long as possible. The conserved areas, protect park areas, as we normally see them, they allow the visitors to come in. But we don't want that. That would be, there's a potential scaring of the polar bear from their habitat. So that's why we don't want any disturbance at all for the polar bear when they will be in their habitat. How I can explain that is in the summertime, the polar bears go to offshore islands, and in as much as possible, every year the polar bear should be in the offshore areas. If there should be a development in these islands, then for sure the polar bear will have to move inland. That will cause a big problem. We are still doing traditional activities like summer camping. A lot of people go south, a lot of people go north along the shore of the mainland. If the polar bears were here, then people are more in danger that we don't like. So what we're actually trying to do is keep the habitat for the polar bear, keep the habitat for the people, and all the people around this area will be successful in whatever they're doing. We put these islands as a protected area. Our objective is we want to impose no hunting for polar bear while they are in their habitat. I know the hunters have every right to hunt the polar bear, but to minimize the disturbance, we want to impose no hunting on these islands. Because in the wintertime, end of December or January, the bears normally go to the mainland. And this, when they go closer to the mainland, the hunters will still be able to hunt them like they have done for so many years. We don't necessarily need to go to these islands to hunt our polar bear, because the polar bear in the wintertime do their harvesting around this area. So that will remain the same. It is not just the polar bear. We know there are eider ducks, seals, whales, bowhead whales. The Arqvilliit is a translation for bowhead whales. This is where the bowhead whales frequent, according to the history of Inuit. That's where the bowhead whales are. And also we know that there are artifacts. People used to live there as well. They were frequented by the Inuit. When the ice drifted away from the mainland, the hunters normally end up in these islands and stayed there for several periods of time. So there are archaeological pieces in those islands which are important to preserve as well. Within the second year, we are finally purchasing some equipment that we will use to travel to these islands. Last year we bought a boat, but unfortunately we were not able to take it to our community. And this summer we expect to get a hold of our boat, and this will be the first summer that we will be in the field to make the studies. We know they are there, but we will be there in the field to confirm all that we have been talking about. For the whole summer season, as long as it's a boating season, we plan to be in the field to show exactly what we're talking about. Okay, this is the initial presentation I made, but it's for everybody. It will benefit everybody. It will benefit Canada. It will be beneficial for everyone else. It's very important to have a polar bear on hand in as much as possible. These conservation measures are important because, according to my understanding, we used to have wolverine, but we don't have wolverine anymore. I don't want to say we used to have polar bears, but we don't have polar bears anymore. That's the last thing I would want to say. And in order for us to have a polar bear time after time, generation after generation, it's important that everyone takes part in trying to conserve these islands. It's good for everybody, not only for our community, it's good for everybody around the world.